Okay, Rick, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the December 18th meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. My name is Rick Leaf. I'm chair of the committee. Start tonight by taking our attendance. John Ray. I don't see him on the list yet. Amy Paretsky. Millie Milton.
Here.
Leslie Harrison. Not seeing her yet. Paul Cacciatore.
Here.
Fran
just-
Backstrom.
Excuse me one
Here.
second, Rick. Excuse me one second, Rick. Leslie just sent an email. She's having some technical difficulties.
Oh,
And
okay.
she's calling me too.
I'll email her the link.
Hey, Leslie.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Paul. Gene Kennedy.
Yeah.
Gene Cahill. Rick Leaf is here. John Campbell.
Here.
Jen Tolman.
You're muted, Jen.
Jen, can you unmute and say you're here?
Did it work? I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
Is it working?
Yep.
Okay.
And Judy Boyle. And Judy, I think I saw.
Judy sent me an email saying that she won't be able to make it tonight.
Okay. I think I just saw Gene Kennedy. Gene, are you here now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Okay. Our main focus tonight is going to be talking about the economic development portion of the master plan. But before we do that, the first item on the agenda, just get an update from Lori on what's transpiring with the Blake Clear Street streetscape project. So why don't you start with that, Lori?
Sure. I'm happy to report that the contract with Mass DOT has been finally signed. So we did go back and forth with Mass DOT over the scope of the project. So when it was originally submitted, there were certain tasks that I was hoping would be covered by the MVP grant. And of course, that grant was unsuccessful. So I asked to renegotiate the project scope, particularly on Blake Street. So originally, I think I reported in October that I had applied for 10 LED streetlights. So we renegotiated the contract. So now they are paying for 4 LED streetlights on the west side of Blake Street, as well as concrete sidewalk and vertical granite curb. One thing that was kind of a surprise to me is that the Pierce Street project, which I suspected would be fully funded, they decided that they didn't want to pay for the fence that would separate the municipal parking lot from the railroad tracks. And they also didn't want to pay for a large portion of the repaving of the municipal parking lot. So they did pay for the drainage and the portion of the parking lot that was necessary to be regraded to accommodate the drainage. But the rest of it they wouldn't pay for. So that freed up some money. Originally, we thought we were going to do concrete sidewalks with monolithic concrete curb. But because they wouldn't pay for the municipal parking lot, that ended up leaving some extra money available. So we asked them to pay for the vertical granite curb instead of the monolithic concrete curb. It has much more longevity than the concrete curb, and they did agree to that. So that was all settled within the last probably week and a half. So the contract has been signed and construction will go forward this spring. So the beta group is finalizing the design plans and we anticipate going out to bid in February timeframe approximately. Oh, the other item in the agenda is the CPC application. So I did end up filing that application. Since the last meeting, the beta group did update the cost estimate. So it ended up being higher by the time I submitted the application than it had been previously. So the amount of money that I requested was $850,000. That did include a 20% contingency, which is a bit higher than we typically ask for in a contingency. Usually it's about 10 to 15%. The beta group thought that it was a good idea to include the higher contingency because the design was not complete. It was only to about the 75% design phase. So they thought that it would be a good idea to add some additional wiggle room there. So since that time, the public hearing began with the CPC on December 4th, I believe it was. So I provided a presentation. Then a few days after that, I was asked to give a presentation to the Financial Planning Committee. So that happened, I believe, on December 9th. Today, actually last night, I received an email from the chairman asking for additional information. And one of their questions was, what is the cost differential between doing Cape Cod berm versus vertical granite curb? And that differential was about $43,000. So not quite sure where they're going to land on whether they're going to recommend the project or be supportive of the project or not. The public hearing was also continued with the Community Preservation Committee to January, I believe it's January 8th. So they have not yet begun their deliberations. So I anticipate that January 8th will be the start of the deliberations. Happy to answer any questions.
Who was that was wondering the cost difference between the Cape Cod berm and the granite curb?
That was the chair of the Financial Planning Committee.
Okay.
Lori, I think it's important to note that the Park and Recs Commission supports this project. Our chairman, Gary Mandolino, I know submitted a letter of support to Mr. Campbell, who is the CPC chairman. My question during this whole process was who's managing the land? And that was clarified that Parks and Rec would be the group that would be managing the land per se, similar to the common and other areas in the town that represent Parks and Recs. So just wanted to make that clear as the representative from the Park and Recs Commission that those two things I just wanted noted here in case anyone has any questions.
Good information. Thanks, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments for Lori about the status of Blake and Pierce Street? We'll just have to see, based on the next Community Preservation Commission committee meeting, where that committee is going to go with that recommendation as far as bringing something forward to town meeting, and then also what other support or questions we might get about that going forward. Okay, let's move on to the master plan. I think, as I mentioned the last meeting, and then subsequent to that, I think it's important to feed back to the select board kind of the status of the master plan as it relates to economic development. They've started discussions about forming an economic development committee. Didn't get too far down the road at their initial meeting. Their meeting this past Monday night, they had that in the agenda, but decided not to discuss it any further. But the plan would be, if they want to go forward with this, to develop a charge for the Economic Development Committee. And my feeling is there's a lot of items and recommendations in the master plan around economic development that could serve as a basis of what the charter of that committee could be. If nothing else, the committee should understand what the plan said and understand how to integrate some of the recommendations of the plan into what if strategic planning is done in the future for economic development in the town. So I think, once we've sort of gone through this tonight and sort of agree as to how the matrix looks right now as far as what it's saying about each of the recommendations, obviously we would advise the select board to review the matrix and its status of all the recommendations, review the master plan related to economic development, and to take all of that into consideration as they decide how to go forward with economic development, and to make ourselves available to answer any questions or provide any other support they feel that we could provide, kind of thing. So I think the goal tonight is just to kind of go through the matrix recommendation by recommendation, see if anybody has any comments or wants to change any of the wording. And my goal would be to sort of, as a committee, sort of agree on the wording of the matrix for the economic development things. And I also want to jump into a little bit down into some of the land use items. There's a number of land use items directly related to downtown and to economic development. And we need to take a look at those tonight also. So Lori, if you could bring up the matrix on the screen there. The link to this was sent to all of you guys a couple of days in advance of the meeting. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it, or if not, we can comment on this tonight. So the economic development recommendations, ED11 through ED17, are tied to the downtown. The numbering scheme kind of goes with the goals. So the first goal in the master plan for economic development was to define downtown in terms of its geography, downtown business district, appearance, branding, and function. And then a number of these 7 recommendations were then listed in the plan around the downtown. First of which had to do with creating a downtown planning and revitalization committee. And as those of you who have been on this committee for a while recall, when we first, as an MPIC, talked about this, we talked about the pros and cons of setting up a separate committee to do this, or whether the MPIC should take responsibility for going forward with moving the downtown recommendations forward. And the agreement was that it didn't make sense to have a separate committee, and most people on the MPIC were interested in staying involved with this. And so we decided the MPIC would sort of further advancement of the downtown recommendations, the first of which was to foster a specific study for the downtown, which led to the selection of a consulting firm and the development of a downtown revitalization strategy. So ED11 had to do with basically the development of this committee and what it was going to do. I've been going back and forth on whether the status of this should be underway or complete, in that it's complete from the standpoint that the MPIC decided to be the committee, commissioned the downtown revitalization study, and that was done. But we've also been working along with Lori for quite a while now on the ongoing plans, once the revitalization study was completed, to develop really the first step that we recommended, which was the work on Blake and Pierce Street. So I guess I'd just be interested to see whether people feel that the proper status of this, number one, is either complete or underway. What do people think about that?
Was in the red. I did it as a planning board rep. I actually went through this
Yeah.
and sent it to Lori and Rick because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's kind of always ongoing because I think the boards, the ZBA, the BOS, planning board, design review will always think about the downtown. But if we're going to create an economic development committee, then maybe we're complete as far as MPIC, but it's ongoing as far as the town. Like, I think the downtown will always be ongoing because there's always going to be ways to make it look nicer.
Right. And there are other recommendations. They're going to talk about other things to do to advance the actual project. You know, ED 11 was basically the formation of a committee to oversee, the downtown revitalization, the downtown work itself.
Rick, is the question, forgive me, are you clarifying whether this committee believes there should be another committee or a subcommittee, or whether this committee continues to play the role that we're doing?
Well, I guess that's the question. I think if in fact the select board decides to create an economic development committee, then the downtown is part of the bigger economic development picture. I mean, economic development also includes other areas of the town that are not downtown. So to a certain extent, I think that the responsibility for moving these recommendations forward, would start to fall, to the Economic Development Committee, if in fact that gets formed.
Well, yeah, I guess my thoughts would be, if that gets formed, then this committee would have a different set of voices to discuss the recommendations with, and we would continue to advocate for the things in the master plan, most of which would overlap with what they're doing. In a perfect world, I think we preferred an economic development director, someone whose sole focus was that purpose, which might employ other staff, but I guess I'm assuming the current board doesn't think that's affordable.
I think in the current financial situation, that's probably the case.
Fair enough.
So Rick, this is Fran. I mean, I think that our involvement is completed, but to Amy's point, if you just look at the implementation leaders, it's the planning board and the board of selectmen. So if an economic development committee is formed between them trying to bring businesses into the town, including downtown, and the planning board having the responsibility of making sure our zoning makes it, not easy, but, doable, that our role is done, but the implementation leaders are the planning board and the board of selectmen, and I think that that's appropriate, that's where it appropriately belongs.
Yeah.
Do we have any sense of what the selectmen will do in terms of supporting that committee? I went on the town website and I took a look at the selectmen's package that was prepared for the December 15th meeting. and it was only 131 pages. And the economic development discussion was one of the last agenda items. So it's an understatement to say that the selectmen have a lot on their plate. So I wasn't sure whether they took action or not. From what Rick says, it sounds like maybe they got to the end, but just sort of ran out of time. Are we expecting them to approve the creation of that committee at the next selectmen's meeting? Or do we not know how the selectmen feel about creating that committee?
I think it's the latter at this point. I'm not sure we know how they feel. I think there's going to be different opinions from different people about it. So I think it's up in the air right now as to what they would do and how they would do it. I think our point is to give them an update on where things stand vis-a-vis the master plan and economic development, and to encourage that if in fact they start to develop a strategy, either through a committee or some other way to start working on economic development, that they need to build the recommendations of the plan into what they're doing. I think that from our perspective in MPIC, to make sure that we see something happening on these recommendations, that they just don't go off on some different course and ignore the plan altogether.
Well,
The purpose
that-
of doing this exercise is to make sure we have agreement as to what the matrix says about the status of the recommendations, and then to basically encourage them to read these recommendations and to read the plan and to use it in whatever decision making they do going forward.
correct, because in that package for the December 15th meeting, the town administrator provided a 2-page memo regarding an economic development committee.
Yes.
And they identified in that memo 5 goals or objectives of the committee. And the 4th goal is to support the implementation of master plan recommendations related to economic vitality.
Mhm.
So it's clear that they would pick up on the economic development recommendations in the master plan as a focus of their charge as they move forward. So I guess our role would be to reinforce the fact that the committee is warranted, and it's addressing the issues in the master plan are key components of what they should be working on. So I would see us perhaps making that recommendation at some point.
Right. I think that can go hand in hand with whatever vehicle we use to inform the selectmen that they should take a look at the matrix, understand the recommendations and where they stand, and, basically use that going forward. I agree that I saw that also, that they had built into the charge they were discussing integration with the master plan, but once again, they haven't finalized that charge yet, and so it's conceivable they could change that wording or do something else to it. So
Right.
what Stephanie suggested to them it hasn't been adopted yet.
And the other thought that I had, there used to be something called the Industrial Development Commission.
Yeah.
And I think their focus was primarily on industrial and commercial property and redevelopment.
Yep.
I did not see on the website a list of members. I did not see a list of recent meeting minutes or agendas. So I'm not sure what the status of it is, but clearly I would think the selectmen would want to address the status of that group vis-a-vis a newly formed Economic Development Commission. And in fact, perhaps if it's inactive now, take a look at previous members of that group as potential members of the new Economic Development Commission, maybe bring some history back, economic development history back into this new committee.
Jean, if I can actually speak on that, that committee is defunct and has been for close to 7 or 8 years.
Okay,
You're right, you didn't see any notes. There hasn't been any meetings. I don't believe any of those previous committee members have continued to be involved in any of the downtown or any of the economic or any of the master plan.
It was Mark Donahue and he was on the master plan. The last I saw, there were only two members, Mark Donahue and one other person. And
Yeah,
he was on the master plan committee, and then he's now an attorney that's bringing forth the projects.
right, but I think even then, it's been over 7 years that he's
Yeah,
been active, that it's been active.
Well, why
I
don't we,
agree.
for this particular one, why don't we leave the status is underway, and we can comment on whatever method we use to communicate to the select board that the MPIC will continue to sort of shepherd this through until some decision is made about how they want to work on economic development, and then we will, support and help whatever group that's going to be. Till that time, we'll continue to sort of, oversee these economic development activities. So we'll leave that one underway.
And
Right.
I think back to the actual objective and the goal is that we have completed that one for ED1. We, basically says we were responsible for getting the plans out. We got the plans out.
Yeah.
It's not responsible for actually implementing and do the downtown plan.
I agree. I think we're done.
Yeah.
All right, okay, then we'll just go the separate way. We can change that to complete. Is there any objection from anyone else to changing that from underway to complete? Hearing none. Lori, can you change that one to complete on ED11?
I will.
Okay, ED12, explore potential acquisitions or land deals to appropriately scale the downtown. Right now it says underway with a status of acquiring 4 West Main Street, which we have done, but I'm wondering if that particular status update makes more sense under ED15, which is explore the potential for repurposing 4 West Main Street as an anchor for the downtown. Keep saying, that basically that ED 15 is underway, and basically saying that ED12 has not started yet. I think ED12 is somewhat more conceptual in nature. This might be a task for an economic development committee or a coordinator.
Yeah, Rick, this is John. I agree. Let's be realistic that between White Cliff's potential sale, transfer, repurpose, and the 4 West Main, that the town's boards have their hands full with anything regarding property acquisitions. So ED 1-2 is a wish for the future, where you might start to look at acquisitions or repurposing, that facilitates the greater downtown plan that the consultants brought to us.
Right.
What does it actually mean to appropriately scale the downtown? I'm a little uncertain about that.
Yeah, I think what they were getting at was that some decision we made about kind of what we wanted the downtown to look like in terms of the types of businesses, the size of businesses, and maybe even the building forms that would sort of be developed in some sort of a downtown strategy. And so anything we did in terms of acquiring or any land deals would sort of fit into sort of a general picture of what we wanted the downtown to look like once we determined what that was. Obviously, no work has been done except for maybe some general ideas that came out in the downtown revitalization study. But I think that was kind of the general idea of that there would be some sort of an understanding or a future plan for how big or what we wanted the buildings to look like or whatever, something like that.
Like Rickdale's used to be a bigger building on the corner there. So we had talked about the master plan. Would we buy a couple of the smaller buildings and then sell it as one parcel to a developer to build a bigger building? So say you bought Richdale Liquor Store and the Brazilian Meat Market, and then you sell it to a developer to do something bigger. Instead of a lot of little parcels, it would be one big. But that's why I wrote in red, like, would we even do that? It was something we talked about, but I can't see the town doing it right now.
Mm-mm.
If there is a focus group known as an Economic Development Committee, that they would be the ones exploring those possibilities. So, but I agree that when we said explore potential acquisitions, at the time, we didn't own 4 West Main, right? And then that became one of the steps that we accomplished. So it is a wish list, I guess, at this point.
So why don't we change the status of that to not yet initiated, and then take the comment and move it down to ED 15.
Future Economic Development Committee too.
I
You know, I
kind
think
of
what we're going to do is, I think we're going to say
the fire
in
station
general
bill-
about these things that
Mhm.
the Economic Development Committee is going to have to take responsibility. If there's not going to be an economic development coordinator, if there's going to be a committee, it's going to take responsibility for moving these recommendations forward in general.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's already completed.
Jen, you are very low. We can hardly hear you.
Hold on. If I talk a little, is that better?
A little bit.
Stupid thing. I always have trouble with the audio. I was thinking it was kind of complete because they already like got 4 West Main, the fire station, the little house, you know, all those homes right there. So I kind of feel like it's done. Everything else is already owned by people. You know, and there's already businesses. It's not like they're vacant buildings. They're all flourishing businesses that are down there. I don't know.
Except I think the idea of this was to be, if there was going to be an economic development coordinator, would that person pursue with the business owners what their future plans are? And if there was some plan at some point to sell their businesses, to also be working with some developers to see if there might be some interest in consolidating some of the properties, doing something different with them. So
Or
it has to
maybe
do more with
using-
kind of looking at the future of what might happen to these things downtown. Putting in, I agree with you, because they're privately owned. The town can't put a plan together for them, but there could be negotiations or discussions with business owners about what they see for the future of their properties.
Yeah, and like communal parking amongst businesses, things like that.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Maybe use a different color if this board thinks that it's an economic development issue. I know that in a couple other committees that I'm on internally, we use different colors to put them in different statuses, not necessarily columns. But if we feel as a board that, somebody else is going to have to take the lead on a certain line item, then at least we would know, okay, yellow, we talked about this on December 18th, 2025. Make a note inside that the board at that time feels like we should kick this one to the Economic Development Committee. Because I feel like we need another word other than underway or progressing, or because completed in my mind is out of sight, like we're done,
Mhm.
right? So that one really should be either in red or taken off of our list, or just create another worksheet that we've completed that task. as a group. Just as someone who's just coming new to this, that's what I'm struggling with a little bit right now is like, okay, I see all these acronyms and BOS, TM, PB, PD, and I have to try to like figure out what those are in my head. But then I'm hearing different things on like, okay, well, we're gonna move the text from E or down to 5. What happens to 2? Are we gonna close that out? You know what I'm saying? So like, if we decide that we're gonna close out an issue, I think it should go into red and get off the worksheet of so we can go back and Rick will know, listen, we talked about this on the 18th, we're done. And here's all the action items we need to deal with. That's just my personal opinion, because this is a lot to digest. And
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but we've had 5 years of looking at this, whereas you're just coming on board. And you know, changing the way we're looking at it would probably be in some ways. I actually go with the whole color scheme myself. I find it easier, so I don't think that's a big deal. But I think moving it to a whole different spreadsheet is probably a challenge for some.
I didn't mean saying a different spreadsheet, I just different worksheet within this one.
Mm.
So that we know that we've completed that task.
Mm.
Let's kind of go through each item and see where we are as far as I think the three choices are either it's complete, it's underway, or it hasn't started yet.
Exactly.
So let's make those decisions on each of these, and we can go back and talk about the best way to indicate that within the matrix. I agree with Millie at this point. We've been dealing with the matrix this way for quite a while, so we should kind of leave it the way it is. But if we want to talk about where its status is or color code them in a certain way, we can certainly do that. So I think where I'm leaning for ED 2.2 is to say it's not yet initiated, and to take the verbiage under task completed to date and just move that down under ED 1.5, which specifically talks about 4 West Main Street.
I'm good with that.
Any other comments or suggestions? So let's move on
Wonder,
to,
I'm
Go
just
ahead.
wondering if we're really thinking that's going to be the Economic Development Committee, do we put not yet initiated possible Economic Development Committee, just so we know we talked about it and where we're thinking of going with it next? Because you know it's not something we're going to do.
Yep.
And right now it's Board of Selectmen with Planning Director and Planning Board and Town Manager.
Maybe under the category that says reasons why objective wasn't implemented, we could put economic, staffing issues and say, ideally, this will be handled by an economic development coordinator / committee.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pending
that could-
Economic Development Committee.
Sure.
yeah, we could put that in the far right column, yeah. Okay, as we talk about each of these things, so do we also want to put that comment under ED 1.2 that that's also
Yep.
something
I
for
thought
the
that's what we were
Economic
on
Development
one
Committee?
too.
Yeah.
We're on 1.2, right? Is it 1.1 complete?
Well, the other thing is if we're going to put that under if it turns out we're going to put that comment under everything that we talk about as a cover for this whole thing, we can just say, that basically our recommendation is that the responsibility for seeing these goals forward rests with the proposed Economic Development Committee or a coordinator if one is hired. So that could be
Yeah,
just
and
a
some-
blanket statement as opposed to item by item by item repeating that. So we
I
should
think
just where we end up.
1.1, we left it with the Planning Board and the ZBA and the BOS. We were done with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so far for 1, 2, and 1, 3, those will be things that we feel are recommendations the committee,
know.
Economic Development Committee needs to consider.
I don't even know if 1-3 is Economic Development Committee. Did we even talk about that yet? That has to do with wayfaring.
We didn't talk about it yet.
Oh, sorry. That's right. That was just 1, 2.
Wayfaring
That
seems
was-
more like planning department, design review. Wouldn't it be Economic Development Committee?
I actually am gonna apply for that grant again this year. So, this is, something that I would handle.
Yeah. So that would be underway in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
So Amy's comment, you want me to delete this?
Yeah, you can delete my comments. I think 2 meetings ago, since I was the planning board rep, I was asked to review it with my comments, so that's what I did. And I emailed them.
Okay. So we'll leave that as underway. The
Are
comment
we
just,
taking column C and then changing it from the people of column C to a newly hopefully formed economic development people? Is that what we're doing? Like taking column C and saying it's not these bold or not bold, it's other people?
I
what
can-
we're talking about right now is in the far right column. Especially for things that are not yet initiated, indicate that we feel that would be something the Economic Development Committee should pick up and work on.
Freezing the top
That's
row
sort of
so I
like
can
the
see the
list.
headings.
You're making a list of the things from column C that are now going to be shipped over to economic development rather than the people groups of C.
I don't know if anybody else can hear you, but I really can't.
No, it's
So
really
my
hard.
question is, so column C has like the people who are essentially responsible for the objectives. So are we trying to figure out of these objectives, which ones now belong to economic development? Like, are we delegating some of this stuff over to them?
That's what it sounds like to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think 1-1
Yeah.
and 1-3 should stay where they are.
I would envision some sort of a memo from our group to the selectmen and the Economic Development Committee saying something to the effect that on December 18th, we discussed all of the economic development recommendations, and we are providing what we consider to be a status of each one of them for the new committee's consideration. And then essentially pass much of those recommendations on to them, for their work. If there are specific items in this list, like what Laurie is doing, that information is useful to them, so they can focus on something else while the planning board and the planning director pursue wayfaring signage. But I would think our memo should be almost like a handoff of the economic development component of the master plan to the Economic Development Committee.
Yeah, if in fact one is established, I think I agree with you, Gene. The main purpose of the memo is to inform the select board as to the status of these recommendations, to say we're aware that they're considering an Economic Development Committee, and we indicate in the matrix, as well as we can summarize in the memo, these particular recommendations we feel are appropriate for this committee to work on, kind of things. So we can sort of roll those things together.
What we could do in the memo is provide the summary, and then perhaps highlight several of the economic development recommendations that, in our opinion, are important or higher priority. And so to be done with it.
Yeah. But I think, you know, when we say we're done with it, I think our ongoing goal until they decide they don't need us anymore is to continue to review the status, have this matrix continue to go on, continue to review where we're going with these. It could be that if an economic development committee is formed at some point in the future, you know, that we continually, you know, ask them for updates as to how they're doing on these different economic development goals and report back to the select board as to, from our perspective, how we're doing on these things. So I think we'll have an ongoing responsibility to keep track of each of these recommendations until we are willing to say, sign off that they complete and don't need to be considered anymore or aren't going to be done, and this is the reason why.
Yeah, I agree
We'll
with
have an
that.
ongoing responsibility for overseeing sort of the reporting of the status of the recommendations, but I agree, actual implementation of them will shift, you know, to some person or group that's going to be responsible for economic development.
There's a lot here that falls under the planning board that I don't think should go to the economic development committee that, you know, they're new people who are starting on this group that haven't been involved for the last 5-6 years. So
Right.
not all of them are gonna go there, I would think.
Well, certainly anything that has to do with, you know, the recommendations more having to do with zoning and planning and things like that, that wouldn't go to them, but they would obviously gonna have to develop a relationship with the planning board and the zoning board. If in fact there are things they want to do that the zoning doesn't currently permit, then there's gonna have to be a discussion between the committee and the planning board about why the committee thinks we ought to go forward with this, and if the planning board's willing to change the zoning. So there'll be that relationship that develops. I agree with you, Amy, though, that, you
There
know,
probably should be a rep from the planning board and the BOS and the zoning board on this new committee. It'd probably be just another committee with a bunch of the same people like us.
you know,
If you
we'll see
listen
where
to
they,
the
we'll
select
see where
board
they go with
meeting,
that.
yeah, listen to the
Yeah.
select board meeting, that's not the way they're leaning.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
let's keep moving down the list. So 1.3, we're basically going to indicate is underway with the update that Lori talked about, that are reapplying for this particular grant. This will be one that, you know, at this point, we wouldn't foist off on the EDC. I guess
No.
I'll start calling the EDC. We're talking about this committee that hasn't even been formed yet, whether it's even going to be formed, but we know we're talking about it.
Well, I just don't think the whole point of the master plan was to create a new committee to give them all of these. I know in other towns, there was a master plan implementation committee, and then they just go back to the planning board and board of selectmen and say, did you do this? Did you get to this? You know, they don't take everything from the other boards and give it to a new committee. That, I don't
But the
think,
the master plan is much more than just economic development though, Amy, so we're gonna have an ongoing role with every issue, but for the most part, we are just passing the baton to the doers, right?
Mhm.
The doing committee, but it's all gonna be a blend. I mean, there's no way anything that's land use can't be involved with the planning board. I mean, you just
Right.
you can't go one without the other.
I just thought that Rick was saying now we're passing all these economic development things off to a new committee.
Well, I mean,
That wasn't the point
it's
of having an
it's not the
economic
planning board
development section.
responsibility to develop an economic development strategy for the town. If in
Right.
fact there was an economic development coordinator, that would be that person's responsibility, and that person would have to work with the planning board to make sure the zoning supported the view of where the town wanted to go with economic development. And then there'd be negotiations between the economic development coordinator and the planning board as to what the zoning and what the use regulations ought to look like. And eventually there'd be an agreement, and either zoning would be changed or not changed, kind of thing. So I think the development and economic development strategy of the town is beyond the scope of the planning board, but the planning board plays a role in helping to implement that by making sure that the land use regulations support the strategy of the town, or if the planning board disagrees where the town is going, you know, saying why and helping to, you know, sort of shape the future of the strategic development. But I think in the absence of a coordinator, of a staff position who does this, in the absence of the select board wanting to do it themselves, I think it would fall to the committee to start to work to develop an economic development strategy for the town. It couldn't be done without close coordination with the planning board.
And I do think that the other sections like historic and housing and things like that, they do have a committee or a group that really does take charge of them. And economic development doesn't have that at this time.
Well, let's keep going down the list here. So 1.4 is a parking study. And we basically say that, you know, the downtown revitalization study did produce, you know, provides information about parking. You know, the main thing the downtown revitalization study proposed was someday building a parking garage and being a little bit more efficient with the parking we have now. But as far as having a significant plan for increasing parking in the downtown, except for building a parking garage, that's not a whole, the downtown revitalization plan didn't say a lot more about that.
So why would we call it completed, Rick?
Well, that's what the parking study said. I mean, if in fact,
So we conducted a study, I mean, that part's complete, but
Yeah.
we don't have a plan that's executable. Excuse me.
yeah, that's the conundrum. We don't have a plan that's executable right now. We have a report that makes a recommendation, you know, across the street from the fire station on town-owned land to build a parking garage. Beyond that, there's not a whole lot else.
Well, that plan did identify certain side streets where we could accommodate on-street parking.
As I
It
thought
did
about
talk
this,
about potential for municipal parking. It did talk about potential of leasing spaces from underutilized parking lots, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess you're right.
That we approved monies and funds for that to consider purchasing at town meeting or negotiating with other landowners. That was like 4 or 5 years ago.
No, I think it was just two. It was with Tim McEnany and it was with the church.
You're right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, speaking of that, this is John. Every time this comes up, I think about what methods could be promoted that are small doable steps to make use of the parking that exists, make it more accessible to others. Example, you drive into the street where Assabet Park is. There's parking there for that, which needs to be redone. That comes up over and over. But what would it take for some of the parking behind the old Lowe's and the old bank, which is now Vertex? What would it take to make some of that parking accessible to the general public coming into town? And if you had signage, which you see in all developed towns, you see signs for where parking is.
Yep.
And you direct people to turn down that road into that area where there's a lot of parking there, and I can't believe it's ever even close to, capacity. It seems like it's less than a quarter utilized.
Private.
And well, that's what I mean, but
Yeah.
what would it take to make it less private?
Yeah, I agree.
Like
you know-
you'd have to get her to agree.
You have to do what?
You'd have to get the private owner to agree to open it up. I know
Right.
originally she was blocking off so people couldn't even cut through it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure she'd be open, but you could try it.
Well, it's just in the bigger picture. If a portion of that became available for public parking, And my vision of some connectivity through to the common, behind the gas station, get a slot of land somewhere, then, I envision people coming into town being able to park, whether they go to Aspet Park, whether they go to the Common, whether they walk to Main Street. This is the kind of, centralized parking that would be good to achieve. And you're not going to build a parking garage in my lifetime probably, but
We should
We
have
also
audited.
have, we also have additional parking now. I don't think it's a lot, but at the new fire station.
Right, there's gonna be some there.
sure. And so then, then there's obviously the Blake Street area. We can't tackle it all now, but there's parking there that's not always full. Parking at the church you just brought up, I don't know how full that lot ever is, or it's mostly full on Sundays, but so this kind of shared use of parking where if you did a top-down view with a drone, or you put it up on your computer, you can see lots of open space for parking. There's not that many people parking there yet.
Right. What we could do is we could add in the column says proposed future tasks. We could put a comment that says consider lease agreements for parking with private parking lot owners.
Yeah,
And we could either decide to keep the status as completed with that proposed future task, or we could change the status to underway and add that comment.
So the
I like-
town
I
would
like
pay
that
to
idea.
lease the parking?
The town would have to strike, yes, have to strike some sort of an agreement, whether it would be either out of the goodness of the heart of the private owner, they'd allow that parking to be available either 24 hours a day or during certain periods when it's not busy. It's probably more the way it would typically work would be that the town would set up a lease agreement and pay a certain fee for the ability to use that parking either 24 hours a day or on some basis. I know, as it was said, there was an article at town meeting that appropriated some money to help do that at one point.
It might
what was
be
the money
also
for?
oh, sorry.
Vertex has parties at night, so that parking lot is jamming sometimes on a Wednesday or Thursday night. But more importantly, having planned several events downtown, the bathroom situation. Even though there are porta potties over at Assabet Park, that people want them closer to the common. FYI. Not that that is part of this, because this is parking, but people need a place to run in. And since 4 West Main isn't available to anyone besides the people who use the dentist for the bathroom, that should kind of be with parking, FYI.
I don't know if it's worth mentioning here under planning board that we're actually proposing a valet parking option for a town meeting this year on the warrant.
Valet parking.
So
We
that-
still have to have a spot. I mean, you still have to have a spot to park.
So that more is like a lease agreement where a business owner would work with another business owner and probably lease out their parking to use it for valet.
But it's, yes, that's true, but it's something we're considering. Yes, you have to have a spot, but there's a spot during the day that may be vacant at night.
Well,
So it's being addressed or things are being addressed.
Mhm.
Millie, how would that work?
For instance, you might be able to do a lease agreement with another business that only operates during the day, such as, let's just say, C'est La Vie Bistro. But our parking lot is empty effectively from 3:30 on. So if there's a business that's operating at night, maybe a dinner restaurant or another type of business, theater, that would be able to use the lot that's sitting empty for valet parking.
Sure, I see.
a theater that we don't have yet.
Right. That's what- Or a nightclub that we don't have, right?
Right.
I like the way you think though.
Well, why don't we put a comment on the proposed future tasks around considering agreements with private, uh,
Rick, I already added it.
okay. So now do we want to leave the status of this one completed or change it to underway, given the fact that there's other things we think we can do? Like I said, the completed went in it because we just were saying that it was the downtown revitalization report recommend something about parking, but we could change that to underway. Or just leave it as completed. I think the main thing is the comment, and we can, once again, reference that in our summary memo to the select board on that particular topic.
You could say something like completed, but planning for future needs is ongoing. Because the future is the future. We can't say the future is completed.
Yeah, well, that's
then
what
just-
that proposed future task column is all about.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave it as completed and add a comment in the future task column. Let's move on to 1.5, which has to do with 4 West Main Street, which is definitely underway. I'm not sure there's much more we have to say about that. Lori's got already a comment about what's going on with 4 West Main and where it stands. Anybody want any comments or changes of that, or can we leave 1.5 the way it is? Once again, up in 1.2,
Yeah.
we'll remove that comment about 4 West Main Street out of 1.2, and we've already got a comment about it down in 1.5. Move on to 1.6. Business Improvement District. I don't think there's been any work done at this point about the possibility of doing that. I think that would definitely be something that would fall to either a coordinator or the Economic Development Committee.
Yeah, that seems like a heavy lift in the current environment.
Right, but
Mhm.
We talked to the Hudson planner. She said that they would come in too and give a presentation to either Economic Development Committee, the MPIC, whoever wants to take it on. They would be open anytime to come in and talk about how they did it.
That would be interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
let's keep that in mind. Let's move down to 1.7. Opportunities to incorporate other public gathering spaces, town common, library into the downtown, advance efforts to connect gathering places and improve walkability and accessibility.
Mhm.
This one says completed, but I wonder if, the revitalization plan does talk about that, but we've also got a lot of ongoing work. I mean, the Blake Street project has something to do with that, and wonder if we should change the status of this one to underway.
Before you go on to that one, can I just ask, I just saw that Lori added,
No, I put it in the
Um,
wrong spot.
yeah, okay, I was gonna say it belongs in the one above. Thanks.
It occurs to me as a side note, like 4 West Main, if the pocket park falls under Parks and Rec, why wouldn't the first floor, because I know you can't use the rest of the building, kind of fall under purview of them? Like, couldn't they offer programming as like a community space in that other side of the dentist is on one side with a bathroom. That other space, the old restaurant, could be open for rec space. So the kids don't have to just hang around in the park. They could hang around inside and outside, maybe.
Jen, I wonder if it would be helpful if you called in, because I can't hear a word you're saying.
I can't hear either.
Oh, is that better?
Marginally.
Yell into my computer.
Mhm.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh my God. I hate this computer. So what I was saying was, since park. I didn't realize Parks and Rec were handling the pocket park part of it. So maybe the first floor of 4 West Main would fall under their group also. Because, you know, like as terms of like community space and whatever else you just had, now I can't find it on the computer while I'm laying down here to talk. But then, you know, because the dentist obviously has a bathroom, so it would just be opening up that first floor space as like a rec area, basically. You know, like in terms of a community gathering space, like inside, outside, you get the kids out, or whatever, it's young adults outside in the park, and then they could be inside to use a bathroom or whatever, or hang out without being a hangout.
Mm,
I think the intention of 4 West Main is to either lease it or sell it. It's not currently in good enough shape to be open to the public. There's all sorts of liability reasons, like the elevator is unsafe.
But Jen, to your point, when the town does decide what they're going to do with that building, if they are going to lease space, there would have to be a movement in town to say, well, let's not lease all of it, let's use some of it for local, recreation, stuff like that. But that, first they have to figure out how they're gonna dispose of the building, whether they're gonna sell it outright or lease it or level it.
mm.
I'm
Well,
sure.
I'd say on 1.7, why don't we change the information status to underway? Because there are a lot of ongoing things happening and other things that may happen. Especially with what's going on with Blake and Pearson, trying to put some new sidewalks in over there. Anybody have an objection with changing the status of 1.7 to underway?
No.
All right, so that completes the first set of goals having to do with the downtown. The next set of goals goes with a goal that says promote redevelopment opportunities for vacant or underutilized commercial and industrial properties. So this is kind of town-wide kind of thing. And this gets to, the first one is evaluate the need for an ability to sustain an economic development staff or committee. So I think right now, the status that it's now underway,
Mhm.
the select board is currently reviewing how to proceed on that. So we changed that from not yet initiated, which it wasn't until the select board started discussing this a couple of meetings ago, to now underway and maybe under task completed. Well, I guess under maybe in that task completed to date, maybe a comment about select board currently considering the makeup of an economic development committee.
Gonna have to give Lori a chance to catch up.
Sorry.
Where are you, Lori, right now?
She's adding to ED 1-7.
Mhm.
All right, sorry about that. Do you want me to type something in the next one?
Yeah, I think so. On 2.1, let's change the status from not yet initiated to underway. And in the next box, just put a brief comment, select board currently considering forming an economic development committee.
Does the town have an economic development plan, Laurie?
No.
No. Okay.
There's, of course, the chapter in the master plan, and there was a community development plan completed in the teens, I want to say like 2016, somewhere around there.
All right, so moving on to ED2. Specific recommendation to engage a real estate advisory firm in our CMRPC to create a redevelopment strategy for the town's business districts. That's up. I really think that one is really not yet initiated. And I mean, this is something that if the town doesn't want to farm this out to a consulting group, this would be definitely something that would land with the Economic Development Committee. But I think not yet initiated is probably a better status of this. Any other comments about ED 22? ED 33, downtown improvement financing, tax increment financing. So the first I've heard about this is this deal they're trying to strike with St. Gobain down off of Solomon Pond Road. And I looked ahead. LU 4.3. No, take that back. Where did I find this? In the land use. Oh, no, it's a different comment. Let's forget about that for a minute. Oh, it's under LU 2.4. There's a comment made about annual town meeting select board authorized to negotiate a TIF with St. Gobain for economic expansion. So I'm not sure if that comment is more appropriate for 2-3 or 2-4 has to do with more industrial sites.
Lori, in that section, where you say in 2024, the DPW planning director explored possibility of funding Route 9. Was that not successful, or did you ever apply for a grant, or where's that?
I was specifically told by the select board not to apply for the grant.
Okay,
So I had gone to the select board and asked for a support letter. And they told me not only would they not give me a support letter, but they did not want me to apply for the grant. So I did not.
okay. Do we want to update that? Because that's kind of open-ended.
Yeah, but I think this is where I talk about it. So LU 4.3 is consider increasing water sewer capacity, particularly along Route 20 Southwest Cutoff and Route 9 to enhance development potential. And these
Yep.
statements about that come up again under 4.3. So I think the statement about the sewers can get deleted out of 2-3. And the
You want me to delete that then?
you delete that and also delete in the last column the statement about how the select board didn't support that. And that comes up, those comments come up again under LU 4.3, which is
Okay.
specific about water sewer capacity. And once again, Laura, you've already got under 4-3, the fact that you tried to do this and the fact that select board was not supportive. So I think that's a 4-3.
They weren't supportive because it came in and they didn't know they've been told there was only 25% sewer capacity left. So there was never a plan of where that 25% sewer capacity was gonna go. So when the idea came to go down Lawrence Street onto Route 9, it was a decision that had to be made that night, and they didn't have the answers of where the rest of the sewer capacity go. Was that the best location to put it? So it's not like they just said no. They didn't have all the information that they needed to decide, where the sewer is now and where is there a sewer plan for where we want this last 25% to be utilized.
Yeah, that's what I heard also. But once again, we can, under LU 4-3, we can address all of that. I think we should just take the sewer stuff out of 2-3. And I want to spend a couple of minutes briefly talking about some of these land use things, but I think 4-3, LU 4-3 is the place to have our comments about increasing sewer capacity, or why we haven't done it yet.
Okay.
So for now, let's just remove the sewer part out of 2-3. I think the rest of the comment that's in there, can stay. And this would definitely be something, once again, for the Economic Development Committee to consider. Moving on to 2-4, engage more proactively with landowners in the town's industrial districts, aggregation of property. And this is where the comment was made about, at least in industrial zones, the moving forward with negotiating a TIF with Saint-Gobain for their expansion project. So that can be underway, and that comment makes sense for 2-4.
Mm-hmm.
Are they still negotiating a TIF with Saint-Gobain for an expansion project?
Saint-Gobain was just approved for their expansion
Yep.
on Tuesday night. So I believe that the negotiation with the select board is still underway.
Thank you.
So 2-4 is underway versus not yet initiated. Is that what you said?
Underway, yes. Because there is work trying to going on right now to negotiate a TIF with Saint-Gobain.
I did put the TIF up above because that was specifically talking about TIFs.
Yes, but in the business districts. This is in the industrial, this is an industrial.
Okay, so that one, you want me to leave it in there for White Cliffs, but take it out for Saint-Gobain?
Okay, yeah, you're right. We just don't have any verbiage about White Cliffs in any of the comments. There was verbiage about Saint-Gobain, which made sense for 2.4. The White Cliffs would make sense to 2.3.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could just add just say something, Lori, in 2.3 in the comment section about, negotiation for the sale of the White Cliffs property. Under 2-3. That seems to have gone into some sort of, there was going to be a town meeting earlier this fall to bring this back to the town, and that's kind of, the last I heard was they was trying to switch from a lease agreement to a sale and didn't want to go back to the town until they had figured out. So I'm assuming that's still being negotiated on the White Cliffs.
Yes, and now it's likely that they're gonna go back to a sale.
You mean to a lease?
Elise.
Sale. I mean,
Oh,
I'm
I thought
sorry,
it
a
was the
lease.
hybrid.
Yeah, a lease, you're right.
Back to a lease. Okay. Okay, so we just include a brief statement about under ED 2-3 that there is a negotiation for a TIF for the redevelopment of the White Cliffs. And then in 2-4, we'll talk about the TIF that's under negotiation for Saint-Gobain.
And it may be appropriate to correct the who will likely purchase White Cliffs or may purchase? If you're saying they're looking at a lease now.
Yeah,
there's
that's
nothing-
true. I mean, if they're leasing, then they wouldn't have a TIF.
Right.
Sure how to, maybe at this point, it's not appropriate to put any wording in about the White Cliffs under this particular EG 2.3.
Well, we can update it depending upon how things fall.
Mm,
Okay. That'll be underway. We'll take this water and sewer part of that comment out. Leave the other comment in the way it is, and then this is another one that we can say would be a good topic for the Economic Development Committee to pick up and think about. And then ED 2.4 we've talked about underway in St. Gobain. 2.5 mitigation funding. We kind of say two different things in this particular item. On the one hand, we say the planning board and ZBA can require mitigation for impacts directly tied to the project, and then we say not currently allowed in Massachusetts. So those seem to
Where are you?
I'm down in 2.5, 2-5, employ the idea of fiscal impact assessments or mitigation funding
Oh,
with the status of underway. And then one comment says the planning board and ZBA can require offsite mitigation for impacts that can be directly tied to the project. And then in the final column, it says not currently allowed in Massachusetts.
mitigation payments are not allowed.
But fiscal impact assessments are.
No.
So the goal says
I
explore
can
the idea of
specify
fiscal
what's not
impact.
allowed.
What is allowed? So like when Avalon came in, they got the sewer run and the truck. Wouldn't that be considered mitigation?
So it's like impact fees. So so they can agree. So that's the thing. Like you can't say you're gonna give me $1 million and I'm gonna put it in this decision whether you like it or not. If they say, hey, in order to mitigate the impact, I'm willing to give you $1 million, then you can put it in the decision. You can't force it, you can't assess it, but you can negotiate it. And as long as they agree, you can include it.
So the comment that says planning board and ZBA can require offsite mitigation for impacts that can be directly tied to the project, that's not true?
That is true. So for
Mhm.
example, with the fire station project, we put a condition of approval on there saying that they had to replace the sidewalk in front of their property and they had to extend it to the driveway of the abutting property. We could also require them to put like a crosswalk. If a street light was warranted, they could be required to install that.
So this is it's project work that they would have to do, but it's not direct money. Obviously, the fire department's not going to give money to the town to do this. I mean, the fire department's going to just make sure it gets done working with the town, just like a developer might have to do that. So we can require them to do off-site work to mitigate the effect of their project, but we can't force them to give us money that we can use for some purpose.
mhm.
Correct. If they decide, like if, for example, they're next to the common and through the negotiation process, we agree that they are going to construct 3 parking spaces for the common. So that can be put in their decision, but they don't pay the town to build those parking spaces. They just build them themselves. It ends up being better for them because it's cheaper than if the town were to build the parking using prevailing wage.
Mhm.
So it ends up being a win-win that way.
Well, I guess maybe my sense on this one was to basically change the status from underway to complete, and maybe to say planning board and ZBA can request non-monetary off-site mitigation for impacts that can be directly tied to the project. So the non-monetary idea would come out in the comment, and then the other comment about, you could say monetary impact assessments or mitigation not allowed in Massachusetts. So we make the distinction between the town collecting money from a developer or requiring the developer to do some additional work as part of approval for the project.
Well, it could be like, for example, if there's a large housing development. So instead of requiring them to include recreation resources within the development themselves, it could be negotiated that they give the town $100,000 to upgrade an existing park that's like within 500 feet of their development. So sometimes money can be negotiated, but it can't be required without the developer's consent. Can be, so I'll just say voluntarily negotiated.
Okay. We need to do something then about,
Yeah.
if we want to reword in the last column where it says not currently allowed in Massachusetts, unless voluntarily agreed to by developer or something. It's just that, like I said, the two comments contradict each other. So just make sure the two comments don't contradict each other.
I called it a monetary gift.
Okay, whatever. This is one I could see the select board, saying, my God, how come we're not getting hundreds of thousands of dollars on these development projects? So just make sure that we don't set an expectation with this matrix for something that we can't do.
I talked to a civil engineer who works on projects all the time, and he couldn't believe how we didn't get money and things out of all that stuff that was developed on Bartlett Street. Because I think he said that these developers expect it. They expect to be asked for certain things.
Right.
Because that's the way it happens, I guess.
Well, like I said, the wording of this should just be accurately represent what the situation is. Like I said, I just don't want on this particular one to set an expectation with the select board that's not feasible. If there is a way to get some money, we should obviously be trying to do that as much as we can, but to the extent that it has to be done in a way that doesn't violate state law, we have to do it that way also. So, all right, I think we beat this one to death. ED 3.1, identify and encourage opportunities to incorporate offices or incubator-like concepts into under-occupied spaces. It's a comment that, we've had some revisions to the zoning to allow this to happen. I would think this would be another one that could be, the Economic Development Committee could be looking for these opportunities. So it's being another appropriate one to recommend the Economic Development Committee try and find opportunities to do this, taking advantage of the zoning that's been put in place. 3.2 is events and programming. I know when I heard the initial discussion about the Economic Development Committee at the first meeting, this is something specifically they thought the committee could do. Obviously, our Cultural Affairs Committee gets involved in this also, so this, I think, would be something that would sort of be something, if there was an Economic Development Committee, they would coordinate with Cultural Affairs Committee to, make these things happen. But this is another one that we could say could be part of the function of the Economic Development Committee.
Right,
Other
so
than
their
that,
economic development person works with arts and culture also.
yeah,
Like, I think it depends however the economic development committee is structured, is it more like Hudson? Is it like Westboro? Is it going to be like Franklin? And then those kind of things will help pave the way of where they're going. Whether
Great.
it includes stuff like that or not, I guess.
yep. 3.3, work with existing community and business organizations to collectively increase visibility of business community. I think this is another one that would be a good task for the Economic Development Committee to work on. Another ongoing one underway. 4.1, explore the possibility of attracting hospitality uses to Route 9. So the matrix kind of took a negative point of this one, but with that Hilton Spark theme that came up, that's definitely in line with this. That was something that we didn't obviously go out and recruit. I mean, someone came in and proposed that, and we're glad to accept it. I think the comment about sewer on Route 9 helping the initiative would be useful, but I think we also need to mention in here that the, Spark by Hilton is a step in this direction that's happened and changed the status from stalled to underway.
Also, we're working on that new zoning for the White Cliffs. So we have a proposed hospitality zoning district.
Yeah.
And at last town meeting, we also approved that the whole area over by Wegmans and Avalon is now commercial. So it opens it up to a lot more businesses. And some of the developments came forth and kept theirs industrial too. So they have a choice of either industrial or commercial. So it's opened up to a lot more uses. I think as a planning board, we have been looking at ways ongoing to try to open up to new businesses and new parking, and always thinking about it. I guess because Millie, Lori, and I are on the master plan, it's always in the back of our mind when we're discussing things.
Right, which is good. Yep. Okay, so 4.1 will change the status to underway, and we'll mention Spark by Hilton in the comment, and we can still, make the point that it would be helpful to have better sewer capacity down there. Moving on to 4.2, mixed-use development for appropriately positioned private land assets. So I think, once again, we've put some zoning in place that will allow that to happen. The encouragement of trying to get some of it actually be done, I think will fall once again to the Economic Development Committee. So I agree from a zoning perspective, it might be completed, but from actually trying to get someone to make it happen, like I think, Millie, that's something, that you're planning on doing with your project. So I think I'd leave that as underway as opposed to completed. I think it's ongoing and beyond what you're doing, Millie. I think that's another thing that falls to the Economic Development Committee. Try and see how they can get more of this to happen.
I heard the white mixed use one was auctioned off today too. That's supposed to be mixed use near Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh,
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, you're right. That was auction today.
Yep.
Got that.
I think I should probably say offline.
Oh, okay. Text her. I'm curious.
I think there were only 2 bidders.
Okay,
Right, so Rick, I think you need to just pause a second because Lori's back behind us in her typing and hasn't.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just don't want you to get lost.
Okay, I'm ready.
so we said the 4.2 will keep the statuses complete. 4-3, no, I guess 4-2 is as far as we've got. This is another one that we'll recommend. The Economic Development Committee should be involved in encouraging and trying to find
4-3.
4-2. I'm still on 4-2.
I thought we were putting that as completed.
No, we'll leave that as underway, with Millie's project, ongoing, and the fact I think the committee needs to continue to look at. We've got the zoning complete, but as far as actually encouraging more of this to actually happen, I think that's an ongoing opportunity with between what Millie is proposing and the fact I think there's another good thing for the committee to get involved with if they have a committee to try and encourage this stuff to continue, taking advantage of the zoning. So I'd leave that as underway. Now we'll go down to 4.3, publicly controlled sites. So basically, the Lyman Street property kind of got swept out from under our feet. We had an opportunity a number of years ago to buy that from the state. We chose not to do it. And the state has now swooped in and, auctioned that land off for residential development. I assume, Lori, you still haven't heard anything from anybody about that?
I have not heard from the new property owner as of yet.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I think not yet initiated is the whole idea of this is to put together a review of the town-owned land and a plan for what to do with it. Once again, this might be another Economic Development Committee task. But I think right now, I think not yet initiated is the right status. We don't really have an understanding or a plan for what we might do with town-owned land. Boundary Street, Lyman Street could have been a good opportunity for some sort of a mixed-use development, especially with the people who live there being close to what might have been put in for shops. Could have been a little mini, community with living and retail and whatever, but that's kind of, that boat has already sailed, so I think just not yet initiated is the proper thing there. And once again, that's another one we can recommend the Economic Development Committee give some thought to. So that concludes the economic development. Any other final thoughts or comments or anything? What we'll do is make these changes, and then as Gina suggested, I think Gina and I and Lori can work together to sort of draft up a memo to the select board. But before we do that, I'd just like to jump down. Lori, if you could move us down.
Yeah, I'm
So
just gonna highlight this one just because I need to do more work on it.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
So you want me to move down to land use?
Yeah, let's go down to LU, starting with LU 11. So some of these aren't appropriate. LU 12, build off the 495 Metro West Development Compact Plan, inventory local priority development areas and priority preservation areas to guide future development activities in town. I think that's another good one to highlight to the select board, that this could be another good Economic Development Committee charge to look into this as part of what they're doing. This is kind of a combination of both managing open space, but also for development opportunities. So I think LU 1-2 is appropriate for economic development.
That's also something that I just sent out a bunch of educational materials to the planning board and the ZBA about we're considering updating the open space residential design bylaw. So that's something that we've been working on right now. It's not a cost of community services study, but it's to look at the value of open space in residential development projects.
Okay.
Can I also ask, what is the 495 Metro West Development Compact Plan? I haven't actually seen that.
I'm sure I can get my hands on that.
So that's not something the town did, is that?
No, so there's a entity, it's called 495 Metro West. I can't remember their exact name, but they have a planners group, and for a group for planners and economic development professionals along 495. And we have like a monthly meeting that we talk about various issues. So this entity, I'm sure, prepared this economic development compact plan.
Is that from the state?
No, it would be like this quarter group.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
Once again, this would be something,
I'm gonna highlight this so I don't forget.
Yeah,
this is another
just,
one I think we'd recommend the Economic Development Committee at some point understand
I'm
this.
not sure. If Lori meets with them, it might be something under the planning department. Do you think, Lori? Like, I don't think everything goes to the Economic Development Committee. They
Yeah,
might be part of it.
I would think that also like that first one shouldn't be them. I feel like that's more appropriate for the planning board and the planning department to do.
Which one are we talking about?
The one about the open space, the value of natural lands,
LU2.
Cost of
LU
community
11.
services. Yeah. Like, these are all things planning boards have done in the past, not economic development.
Yeah, like
Alright.
I would agree that second one should be planning as well.
Okay, yeah.
LU 1-2?
Probably all the LUs, the land use.
We'll see. There's a whole bunch of LUs around downtown. We'll get to those in a minute.
And the LU 13, that should be the planning as well as conservation.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that as part of economic development. All right, so then I noticed there's an LU 16/26. LU 16 is a stormwater management bylaw. And LU 26 has to do with exploring opportunities to create walking paths and routes along the river. And below, there's no LU 26, there's LU 25 and LU 27. So what we need to do is where it says LU 16/26, when you take the 26 out, we need to put in that LU 16 has to do with stormwater management bylaws and some information about that. And then take the rest of that text and insert an LU 26 in between 25 and 27, which has to do with opportunities for walking paths along brooks and rivers, et cetera, et cetera. But 16 had nothing to do with walking paths along the rivers. It had to do with a stormwater management bylaw, which has nothing to do with economic development.
Land use, we're not in economic development.
Right, so Lori, if you could just make that change to LU 16 and put in whatever's appropriate for stormwater management. And then set up an LU 26 between 25 and 27 that doesn't exist right now. And that would be the one about explore opportunities for walking paths along brooks and rivers. And then the comment about, some of that was built into the downtown revitalization plan would make sense. That could be a ongoing thing. But then the rest of LU2 is all about downtown. Great design study of the downtown to focus ideas and develop a clear vision for the area. The downtown revitalization plan, that was kind of what it did. So I think that one can stay as completed. Conduct a visual preference study.
I think that was done. I mean, I consider some of the community meetings that we held visual preference, where you look at what they're proposing and state your preferences or your concerns.
And there's some of that.
Yes.
There's a comment that Lori has on that one about a lack of consensus, which I think is true. So exactly, even though we had some meetings and we got some input in the plan, downtown revision plan sort of produced a vision of what it could look like. The reality is there hasn't been a common agreement coalescing around that to do something, to do what the plan says, because of lack of consensus. Requires more, work.
Was it lack of consensus or lack of interest in funding?
I don't know.
I mean, I heard that people want this and that they were mostly in agreement. It was some things were very predominant, but don't seem to understand it has to be paid for. Or how to
So
pay
should
for it.
I change this to completed? Because
I mean,
That's what my
that's been
concern,
done.
when I thought it wasn't done was only because like when we looked at the Harvey property, they had a design, but it was only blocks. So it was like, it really wasn't. Do we have like 40 unit buildings, 20 unit buildings, 200 unit buildings? And I think that's where Rick is, lack of consensus, like.
well, I don't think that that's really our option. It's a privately owned property.
Right.
So whoever wants to develop it is going to propose something that the town responds to.
So what would be a visual preference survey be?
What I've seen is visual preference is kind of like what we were talking about. Do you folks prefer 2-story buildings or 3-story buildings? Do you prefer the buildings to be set back from the street or up to the edge? When we were talking about like the street lighting, and we talked about like the planters and what type of character the town desires. Do you want it to be modern or do you want it to be more classic New England?
Yeah, I feel like we did that.
Okay, I'll change that to completed.
Let's do that. Let's change that one to completed.
We
LU23.
take out the lack of consensus too then?
Yeah, why don't we do that for now? I mean, this may come up again, and if at some point the town really starts to actively pursue what to do downtown, they may decide, the
Yeah.
committee, select boards, or maybe decide they need more citizen input, or maybe not, but
Mhm.
we can take that comment out. 2-3, town bylaws to consider mixed uses. I know we've done a lot of work on that, so we have completed there, which makes sense. Density bonuses. So we've got a comment, Amy comment, density bonuses are included with affordable housing. and higher
Actually,
density.
yeah, I would agree with Amy's comment. We did include density bonuses in the new inclusionary bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
So should we do this as
I think it's completed.
completed?
Okay. Next one, develop a program for the planting and sustained growth of street trees, landscaping, other green infrastructure in downtown, concert with development of fostering partnerships along with the Northborough Garden Club. So we've done, this is one thing we've made a lot, I think it should still be underway, but I think we've made a lot of headway in terms of what we've done in terms of working with the Garden Club and work, Lori, you've done, and I think there's a good comment that kind of talks about all of that. And I think that, as you mentioned, the Blake Pierce Street Streetscape Improvement Project is the next step along the way there. So I think that makes sense to be underway. I think the comments are appropriate. Any other feedback about LU 2.5? Anything else we should add to that? I think that's the one thing we've made some good progress because we could do it for not a lot of money and we had volunteers willing to do
Yeah.
it. I think the center of town, looks a lot better because of all that work that's been done.
I agree.
2.6, like we said, we're missing right now. We're going to move down from above this, explore opportunities to create walking paths, routes along brooks and rivers. There's a comment here that should be ongoing or underway, and there's a performed as part of downtown revitalization plan report. Guess you could also mention, because we're talking about sidewalks, some of the Blake Street, Pierce Street work also is sort of getting towards that recommendation.
Are we talking about the
Talking about taking the verbiage.
2.7?
Well, no, we're talking about we need 2.6. So 2.6 is buried inside of 1.6 right now. So we need to change 1.6 to reference stormwater management. And we need to take the rest, we take the wording that's up there right now and move it down and set up a 2.6 between 2.5 and 2.7, which is explore opportunities to create walking path routes along brooks, rivers, and connecting historic properties to enhance the beauty of historic downtown. So that needs to be moved down as a 2.6, which doesn't exist right now. And then the comment, performed as part of it can be ongoing, performed as part of the 2024 downtown revitalization report can be the comment. And then you're gonna have to come up with new wording for 1.6, whatever the status of the stormwater management bylaw is.
It's done. Isn't it done, lawyers? I'll update it. It's under Concom now. Didn't they go through that whole
Yeah,
thing?
yep, that's all done.
Yeah, so you need to, put that, put the right wording for what the ED1 LU 2.6 is, and then, put in completed if it is, and put in the fact that, that bylaw has been created. So that'll go there, and then the wording that's there right now has to go down in between 2.5 and 2.7 as 2.6. And then you can just carry the rest of that wording forward. Two seven, take advantage of Department of Housing and Community Development downtown initiatives that provide services and technical assistance communities revitalizing their downtowns. So I guess we
The
said
application, I said, can we apply again? But now I'm thinking about what was the application for?
That was wayfinding and branding.
Oh, okay. So you were gonna, yeah, reapply, and then you can take out my comment.
okay. 2.8, evaluate our community preservation funding and other funding sources can be used. You know,
This is certainly
basically,
timely.
yeah, so basically, I think we can basically say underway and make a comment that we do have a request in for community preservation funding for improvements to the Pocket Park on Blake Street. So I think,
Oh, you're on the next one.
yeah, on
Open
two,
2-8.
two, 2-8. I think 2-7 is okay the way it is. You said you're gonna reapply there, and then 2-8 has to do with CPC funding, and we need to update that to say we have a request currently in to improve the Pocket Park on Blake Street.
Excuse me, Rick, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to exit the meeting, but before I do, wanted to tell the committee January 8 is the continuation of the CPC open hearing. We're going to be discussing the Blake Street project in a lot more detail. Some of this discussion tonight has been helpful to me to galvanize places where it serves the master plan. Not that Lori hasn't already voiced that on multiple occasions. But please come in person or tune in and let me know if there's any questions that you have related to CPA specific to that. And Merry Christmas to you all.
Thank you,
John.
John.
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.
Yep,
Have
great
fun
being with
driving
you.
to Boston.
I'm gonna have a blast. Great. Bye all.
Coming back, that will be the fun part.
Exactly.
Okay, so you clear on 2-8, Lori, what to do there? Just basically add some words about the current request for Blake Street Pocket Park.
Yep. I'm shifting this over here.
Okay. So I think that this is good work. I think we've got a good handle on kind of what we want to say here. I guess what I'll propose is let me take a crack at a draft memo to the select board. And then I'll send that, Gene to you and you to Lori, and we can kind of work through it, see how we want it to look. And then basically what we do is basically send that to the select board with the links to the matrix and the links to the master plan. Ask them to review that, and we'd be open to come before them and discuss it in more detail if they'd like to have us, come before them. And we'll also, point out for those areas that we talked about, it'd be appropriate for the EDC to, work on some of these recommendations. We'll indicate that in the cover memo also, which of these goals that we talked about tonight we think would be good for the charge of the EDC.
Do you only want me to forward the goals that would be specifically targeted for the Economic Development Committee, or all of the economic development and land use goals?
So I think what we'll do is we'll send them the whole matrix, and we'll send them the whole master plan, the links to all of it. In the memo, we'll highlight which parts of that, we've concentrated on tonight, and our suggestions, recommendations is what they should do going forward, kind of thing. So I think the cover memo that we're going to write, or whatever we send to them, will sort of focus in on what we discussed tonight, but we'll send them the whole matrix, and we'll send them the whole master plan, and ask them at this point, to focus on these particular parts of the matrix and the master plan, which will be all of economic development and certain parts of land use. Which then leads me to,
I think all of economic development, we kind of went through that.
right. So it'll be all of economic development and parts of land use. And then
Rick,
sort of
you could-
summarize what we did and what they should be looking specifically for, and also where we think the Economic Development Committee should play a role in all of this, or what they should start to be responsible for moving forward on.
So Rick, if I could just ask two things. One, I know that it's not the same makeup on the select board as it was when we previously sent them a letter asking them like, what is it that you want from us type of thing, as far as what their priorities were and if they could give us feedback. I don't recall whether we ever got any feedback, but because we have new members on the select board, I think it's important that they understand that we have been working on this for a while and that it is relevant. I think also that when you're writing this summary memo to them, prior to doing that, listen to what they said or the views that they currently have about the master plan implementation in the December 1st meeting. And then again, during their meeting this past week about economic development and where they see it going, so that you can address some of their concerns up front instead of having to react to them after they get the summary letter. And it'd just be helpful to move us towards a positive approach versus a reactive one.
Okay, that's a good, well, I'll give that some thought, see how we could word that in the memo we send them.
Yeah, I think that would be the right move. Thank you, Fran.
So we will all review the memo before it gets sent. Is that for our next meeting?
Well, I want to get this to them sooner than later. I'm not sure when they're going to make some final decisions. We're not going to meet again until February. By then, they could be far down the road with this. So I guess I'm hopeful that the rest of the committee will trust that Lori and I and Jean can craft this letter properly.
I'd
But
like to read
basically-
it before it goes.
Fine with it going.
I'd like to read it before it goes. If I'm going to agree to it, I don't agree to things blindly without reading them.
Okay, well, basically, I mean, the thing that the key is going to be the what we said in the matrix, kind of thing. But as chair of the planning board, I could see we would have an interest in kind of where this is going. So I'd agree that I don't think that Lori, we could distribute this letter to the whole committee without having a meeting to discuss it. We just can't discuss this over email. So I guess we could make the point that Amy has a particular interest in this as chair of the planning board, but I don't think we could distribute the letter for review and comment without calling a quorum and having a meeting, right?
Well, what we could do is I could email the letter, and then, of course, if people are okay with it as is and don't want changes, then they just don't respond. But anybody who wants to change it could send me their changes, and then I could send those changes out to everybody. Like
You
a
can't do it that-
combo letter, like I could give everybody a deadline. You got to respond by such and such date. Then I could compile all the changes together and send it out again.
Probably
You
can't
no,
vote
you
on it.
can't. That's definitely a violation of open meeting. We can't even agree. We can't even have consensus that we have no comment through email.
We can,
collectively.
as long as comments go directly.
Well, no, it would only be communication between myself and individual members of the committee.
Right, yeah, it's not considered deliberation unless everybody's or a quorum is listed, but we couldn't agree through email we couldn't vote on sending the letter. We could work on the content of the letter. but
Right.
we can't-
Right.
Well, I think we've agreed tonight we're going to send the letter as a group. If in fact we can wordsmith it over email without violating open meeting laws, we could do that. I mean, we didn't take a vote tonight. I think it's pretty much understood.
The other thing
Right.
that you can do, Rick, if Amy, as the chair of the planning board, wants to have input in the content of the letter, the three of you, her, and Jean, do not represent a quorum. You could decide that is it. It is the words of the three of you, right? You
Right.
don't have to, it's not from the whole master plan implementation committee, but as the chair, MPIC, vice chair, and then the planning board chair. These are their thoughts on it, and then the time sensitivity would be resolved.
We don't have any control over the Board of Selectmen's schedule on this. If we put together a letter and had it as an agenda item for our February meeting, we would be sending, and assuming we then, as a group, approve the letter and the language and the context, we were either sending it to the selectmen who are still discussing an economic development committee, or we're sending it to the newly formed economic development committee and copying the selectmen. In either way, we are getting our views on economic development across to the groups that need to hear it. That is an agenda item in February, and the next agenda item in February will be the continuation of discussion of the land use recommendations that we haven't gotten to. And I'm assuming Rick has an interest in us as a group going through all the recommendations by way of updating the entire matrix.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the next step after this would be to finalize, go through the rest of the matrix, and then do a report to the select board on the entire plan.
Right. So, I mean, if people want to read the draft letter, we can discuss it and finalize it in February, and then we'll distribute it to whoever's currently available, whether it's an existing newly formed committee or just the selectmen as they continue to discuss economic development.
Good.
Good to me.
Yeah, my only fear about that is that
They don't hear from us at all before they decide.
right, and I think it's important that as they decide what the committee is going to do and what their charter is going to be, that for economic development, there's an awful lot in the master plan around what the town ought to be thinking about that makes sense, that I think needs to be considered as they develop the makeup of the committee and what the charter is going to be.
So then, Rick, I think we're gonna have to wait till our February 19th meeting to have the letter finalized and everything done. In the meantime, you could ask Julianne just not to put it on the agenda. I mean, how many meetings are they gonna have between Christmas and New Year's week? They'll have like maybe 3 meetings.
Yeah, I mean, I could do that. I could ask Julianne to, hold off on decision-making about this, because we feel it's important that the select board understand where the plan is going with economic development, and it could make a lot of sense for the work of the committee that gets appointed. We meet, bi-monthly. Would she consider, deferring any further discussion about this till we get our information back to them, which we would do as quickly as we could in the month of February? I mean, that's another approach. I'd be more comfortable with that.
Well,
Sounds
the
like
other
you said
option
they-
would be to take the updated matrix as it applies to economic development that we discussed tonight and merely forward it as a transmittal to the Board of Selectmen. And we could take a vote on that now before we adjourn. We would make no comments or with no pros in the memo. It would be merely a technical transfer identifying the current status of all the economic development goals and objectives. And it can be read and used by the selectmen, and if they form the Economic Development Committee in the next month or two, by that committee. Or we could do something more elaborate in terms of focusing on some of the priorities that we feel are important but then only do that after the February meeting when we as a group have a full discussion and come to unanimity on what it is we want to say.
I'd lean towards the latter. I don't think we can just send the matrix over there without some sort of an accompanying note as to what
I
we've been
agree.
doing and why we sent it.
I agree.
So if we need to do it that way, and if the committee feels that committee wants a chance to read it over and have, agreement that everybody's satisfied with the memo, then I guess I would give Julianne a call and see if she could defer any final decision-making on economic development of the committee until she gets our recommendations.
I think
We'll
that's the
certainly
best
have
way.
more impact with a complete vote of this committee.
If in fact she's hesitant to do that, I'd lean towards calling another meeting of this committee sooner than later to, we can put together this letter fairly quickly.
Mhm.
And I would recommend that maybe after the holidays, we reconvene, sometime in January. Find a time and just have that. It's supposed to wait until February that we try
Okay.
and get this done and get this back in front of the select board sooner than
Yep, that'll
later.
be
If she
fine.
agrees
Yeah, good option.
that we could do that.
I'd be up for that.
Mhm.
Okay, so Lori will finish updating the matrix if she hasn't done it already. I'll get a hold of Julianne, let her know what we're thinking about doing, get her feedback, and then through Lori, we'll get an email back out to the committee as to what the next step is going to be as far as completing this task, whether we have the flexibility of waiting until our February meeting or we want to call a meeting in January to finalize it.
Just so you know, I'm about to head out on vacation and I won't be back till January 6th.
What's your last day in the office?
Yeah, I have a half day on Wednesday.
Okay.
So right now, because I'm going to be on vacation for so long, I'm preparing for a planning board meeting and design review committee meeting immediately upon my return. So I'm not going to have any time to work on this until I return.
You talked like the Board of Selectmen had a huge agenda they didn't get to anyway, so maybe they'll put it off.
Yeah,
I'm sure until February. I think they have a lot on there. It sounds like you guys said they're still talking about White Cliffs. I'm sure they have a lot of important things to get to.
I think you're right. Plus, I got planning for town meetings going to start to come up also.
Mhm.
Right.
Isn't John Ray part of our committee?
He is.
I would think hopefully he would give us an idea of priority of where this is. If it's page 131 of the last agenda, is it making its way to 50?
Listen to the meeting, unfortunately. Use closed caption and try to speed through. But both their December 1st and their 15th, the conversation about the relevancy of the master plan implementation committee. And we're not even talking about, one of the comments had to do with, all I hear is Blake Street, Blake Street. They don't talk about economic development at all, which tells me they haven't looked at the master plan if they don't realize that that is exactly what we're talking about. So
Mhm.
I love your color, Fran.
Mm.
And if
It's
John
good.
doesn't continue to attend and doesn't indicate to Lori he's not attending, if he just doesn't show up, this continues, I'm going to talk to Julianne about maybe finding somebody else. But we'll just see what happens here. But I would have expected if he wasn't going to make the meeting tonight, he would have let Lori know about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I haven't heard from him.
I know he personally feels that we've overstepped our authority, even doing all the work we've done for the past 2 or 3 years to take this plan forward. that wasn't our job. So who knows? So what we should do is we have the matrix and you've got the link to the plan between now and our February meeting. Familiarize yourself with the rest of that, and let's try and, starting in February, keep working down through the matrix and the plan till we finally have completed a review of everything. And then we'll send another communication to the select board with the fact that now the entire plan has been reviewed and any comments we want to make about it. And once again, offering to, appear at a select board meeting to talk about the status of the entire plan at some point if they would like us to do it. So I think our focus for the next meeting or two should be to work through the rest of the matrix and the plan. And as we did tonight, just come to an agreement about what the matrix looked like and what it needs to say currently. And then we'll, like I said, complete that. I think that'll be it's been 5+ years since the plan was completed, so it's time to do a thorough update of the entire plan.
Rick, just so you know, currently their next meeting is not until January 12th.
The select board,
Yep.
that's helpful too. Okay, well, the last thing we need to do, first of all, thank you all very much for your participation in this tonight. It's really helpful. I think it's helpful for all of us to sort of stay involved with the plan, see where we're going, and keep working down this path kind of thing. So I think the only other thing we have to do tonight before we adjourn is approve the minutes Lori sent out, a couple of amended versions of the minutes. Hopefully you'll get a chance to read that. Are there any comments or changes beyond what was sent out to us today, the amended version of the minutes? Any comments or changes?
Comments, except for I noticed it's not on the agenda.
Yeah, I just noticed that myself. I
Okay.
wrote it in so that when I look at this agenda to do next month's agenda, it'll be on there. I forgot
Okay.
the last time too.
Okay, so we can't do that if it's not on the agenda. Okay, so at the next meeting, we'll have 2 sets of minutes to review. Having said that, is there anything else we need to discuss tonight that we haven't? Hearing no other business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second for
Second.
that? Okay, I guess as we do with everything else, we need to take a roll call here. Amy,
Aye.
Millie,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Fran, Jean,
Aye.
I say aye. John is no longer here. Jen,
Aye.
we are adjourned. Once again, thanks very much for your help on this, and we'll either get together in February or maybe in January if we need to move quicker on it. Once again, thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
New
Merry
Year,
Christmas.
Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Good night.